and welcome to our podcast, The Journey to CEO Success. I'm your co-host, Melissa Saunders, along with Patrick Thean, award-winning serial entrepreneur, CEO coach, and a Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author. His latest book, The Journey to CEO Success, is a #1 Amazon bestseller. Congrats, Patrick, and the inspiration for the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. It's great to be here for the show today.
Awesome. And we have a treat for you today. We are excited to welcome Drew Golin. Drew is a leader in workforce empowerment and staffing innovation. While in college, he served as the basketball manager for Hall of Fame coach John Chaney, an experience that really shaped his leadership style. After successfully selling not one, but 2 staffing firms, now he serves as COO of Dealerflex and coaches multiple family-owned businesses on growth, leadership, and operational strategy. Welcome to the show, Drew.
Thanks so much, Melissa. Great seeing you again, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome to our show, man. And I'd love to begin by you just taking a couple of minutes and give us a little background on yourself and what you do today.
Yeah. I have a really interesting background when it comes to the staffing industry. I grew up in a home where my mom did staffing, and when I met my soon-to-be wife, she had started a staffing firm out of Washington, D.C. that specialized in the apartment industry. So when we got married, I was in the sports industry, and I pivoted to her business, and we were really good yin and yang. We grew the business really fast, becoming the leader in the Mid-Atlantic area. Eventually, we sold the company, and I stayed on for a number of years as we scaled that company national. After I left the company, I started a staffing firm focused on the light industrial staffing space, where we found a really interesting opportunity, a winning move, where we could quickly connect workers to jobs. It was during the pandemic, partnered with some amazing talent across multiple skill sets. We exited that business in just 2 years. And now I am the COO of Dealerflex, a family-owned business that I was consulting with that needed a COO. And just after about 2 years of consulting, I've been there now for 6 months, having a really great time scaling that business up also.
That's great. And I met you a long time ago. I think it was at InterSolutions, correct?
Correct.
Yes, that's long time ago.
That's the company my wife had started and built. Yep.
Yeah, a long time ago. So first, it's so wonderful to see you go through so many different firms, and I'm grateful that you've used our tools throughout your journey as well. InterSolutions.
I wish I would have learned them about 20 years earlier, Patrick. Yeah.
So thank you. I wanted to really share with you that our audience here, they're all CEOs, and this podcast is to help them all have a joyful and successful life. And you have a really cool background. You're not just that you have a really cool background, but you've kind of done quite a few different companies along the way. So we're going to get to that. But before we get to that, I want to first congratulate you for being named to the Gallery of Success by Temple University. Such a great honor, man. I saw that on your LinkedIn. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I had a really unusual path at Temple University. Temple, if people don't know, it's in Philadelphia, and it's one of those schools that gives a lot back to the city. Well, you'll see leaders in all different sectors coming from Temple University. I was there. I had a real rough time with my parents. My dad was sick. I had lost a sibling, and I was just taking like 3 credits here and there, working at the campus bar. And eventually I somehow found myself as the manager of the basketball team, our greatest marketing tool at the university. Know nothing about basketball, which is the funny part. But I was really connected to that university while there. It took me a little longer to graduate just because of starting off slow. But working for the basketball team, and I came into a major that really spoke to me. It's sport, tourism, and hospitality management. And I had amazing professors, one in particular, Jeffrey Montag, who put me under his wings. And for life, he's been my professor. I will reach out to him when I have difficulty, when I have great times. So I've stayed connected to the university through
So slow down a
sports,
little
and
bit
now
for me. Slow down a little bit for me. There, I'd love to
Sure.
explore a little bit about you working at the for the basketball team, because
Sure.
What surprised me was you said you weren't really that into basketball, so it was the sports connection. But how did that happen? How did you? Because usually I hear the stories where it's like, oh, I love basketball. I got to work for the basketball team, right? It's the other way around. But you just said you weren't into basketball. So
No.
how did you get that, and what drew you there?
So I had a boss, Coach Chaney. He was the basketball coach. And if you took the manager, all 8 of us over his 25-year Hall of Fame career, we all did these specific jobs that really had nothing to do with the on-court success per se, right? So we made sure the students were in the right housing, traveling, equipment. Our job was to make sure that the coaches and players only had to worry about playing and school, but there's all those ancillary things around it. So Coach wasn't looking for another voice. That was his only interview question to me. Do you know anything about basketball? And I said, I really don't. I played on Brett and Andy Levin's front yard. He said, perfect. Because he didn't need another voice. He needed someone who saw basketball or a business or a team in a different perspective. And that's why it did well.
How did that opportunity affect your joy? So your journey, right? Your journey, your success, when you look back, how did that affect you positively or negatively, and how did it direct your life?
It's everything. Every company I've been a part of, or the lessons that I learned there about teamwork, about ownership. If 2 people owned something, nobody owned it. About position, like when Coach would talk about the players, the point guard was supposed to have the ball, right? The big guys were supposed to rebound, right? So it was all about positioning and who was responsible. So when I look at someone in our company, and if they're not doing something that they're supposed to be doing a certain percentage of time, I know there's a failure and we got to fix it. So that's what I mean. Just from a strategy, that's what I would look at when I saw when I was listening to basketball being taught.
Thank you, thank you. That's a good learning to share. Thank you so much. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, and just like I owned what I owned for the team. Like I owned equipment, I owned travel. Different parts of it. I owned making sure that the courts were set up, that the players were happy and outside of the court. So I knew what I owned, and it was very like. What we said, what all the managers who worked for Coach at the time would say is like he kept it really simple. It was A, B, C. You never go to D. You go back to A. So fundamentals in businesses that I'm a part of, I'm obsessive, right? So when I just took over as COO, first thing I focused on was fundamentals in the company, right? And you could find so much value just going back to the basics, especially if you started a company where you kind of have to know a little bit about everything. And then you just keep hyper focusing on fundamentals. Who owns it, right? So like a great RACI chart, and who owns those specific things. I just think that whenever a friend calls me and says I'm struggling, I'm scaling, I'm like, focus on the fundamentals, right? And and I just kept hearing that over and over at every practice. The one thing our school did was, Coach Chaney, we led the nation every year in the least amount of turnovers. So I hate turnovers. I hate self-inflicted wounds. So I just am so beat up by that, right, Patrick? So that's that lessons that came in.
Yes. By the way, I love that you say that, because I love watching tennis. I like watching tennis, and whenever I watch a tennis game, Wimbledon, U.S. Open, whatever, I actually pay attention to that. I'm like, dang, look at those. In tennis, we call that unforced errors, right? I'm like, oh my God, he just hit an unforced error. He just hit that thing wide by an inch when he already won the point. See that all the times, like self-inflicted wounds. I love something else you said just now about Coach saying from A you go to B, you go to C, but you never go to D. You go back to A. What does that mean?
ABCs, right? It's fundamental. You can teach someone really young that they'll understand that. So when you have people in your organization coming in, you just want to say, hey, listen, let's really get this done. Let's make sure you own this. You're the most important person because you own this, right? And he would always say it, like if a janitor came in and you gave the janitor a broom, make sure that floor is clean, right? So those are fundamentals. So it really upsets me that the organization lets down our employees if the fundamentals aren't had. And I will say one other thing. He always said, never give them a reason to fail, right? So our jobs as leaders is to look in the mirror and say, did we provide a place where that person can't say they failed because of? right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that those are just lessons that just like, it's every day. You know, I'm thinking about those things and closing my
Drew,
eyes and being in
that's why
practice.
that's why I think you've had a really joyful and successful journey, because these fundamentals, I think, ground you, and every time you have a challenge, you kind of remember the fundamentals, right?
That's it. That's
Yeah.
your go-to. And companies that are scaling and that forget their fundamentals, that's when they'll have bad AR, right? That's when they'll have
Yeah.
clients complaining about that this isn't the same group I worked with.
Right.
So being grounded in, knowing what you're great at. At Temple, we weren't a great shooting team, but we got more shots off in a game because we didn't have turnovers, right? So the numbers will, they'll balance themselves out.
Yes. Yes. So, sorry, back to Gallery of Success. Tell me
Sure.
about that. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I was recognized for my major as someone who left Temple and had some impact in the world, and it was really overwhelming to be on stage with some of the different people that were there from the different majors. I actually went and I spoke to a class earlier in the day just to be grounded in the moment, and two things really stuck out at me. One, I asked the students to raise their hand if they ever heard of Coach Chaney, and he only passed 5 years ago. There's a big monument sitting in front of the arena, and only 5 out of the 30 students knew who he was. So
Wow.
I've been thinking about that a lot as a legacy, right? Like I'll never have as big a legacy or, as that person at that university, but time moves fast, right? But I know the impact's being felt. The other part is I just had a lot of great feelings coming out of there to see the students that were in that classroom that were just all in about listening to someone who's out in the world and they want to be great. And I'm really excited about this generation that my kids are both part of that's coming up.
How old are your kids, by the way, Drew?
Yeah, I have a 21-year-old son named Robert. He's at Emory going into his senior year, and a daughter named Cassidy, who's a sophomore at Colorado.
Wonderful. Congratulations, man. You got two kids. I got 2 kids too. I got 2 girls. They're both working in Seattle now, so it's all good. In your LinkedIn, when you shared about this Gallery of Success, you shared something very heartfelt to me, which is you thanked your best boss, John, and tell us a little bit about what you learned from him, because you said that he was the best boss you've ever had. So
yeah,
what made him the best boss you ever had? And I share that also because, as I share and coach younger folks like my 2 daughters, I always tell them, your manager has such an impact on you. And even for me, when I work for a great manager, it made such a big difference to me. And when I work for a bad manager, it made such a big negative difference to me. It's almost like when I was back in grade school and high school, it's like when I didn't like a subject, in reflection, I'm like, did I really not like the subject? Or was it because I didn't like the teacher? And lots of times it was because I didn't like the teacher.
Yeah.
So a bad math teacher would make me feel like I'm bad at math. A great math teacher would ignite my interest. So tell us about the best boss you've ever had.
Yeah. So there's this guy, John DeSangro, and if you're from Philadelphia, you heard his name after the Phillies games for many years as the assistant executive producer of the Phillies. But I knew him as my boss at Temple, who was manager number 1 for Coach Chaney. John DeSangro, they literally had 2.5 minutes they talked about him, the announcer, before the Phillies game, the day after he passed. But I know him as the guy who's just the most consistent, loyal person. Now, one thing I use about John DeSangro, and it's just the greatest way to compliment an employee, I feel, because he did it to me all the time. When I would do something and I was recognized, hey, you did something really good, he would always say, I'm not surprised.
Mm.
Think about that. Like, he knew he was hiring someone who was capable of doing that job. And instead of him saying, hey, great job, he's like, I'm not surprised. He and it was just like such an impactful thing. John was the most perfect person at creating habits and consistency. He did the job of 5 people. When you look at a college basketball team or a professional basketball team, there's all these suits on the bench, right? And at Temple, Coach Chaney wanted a really small group of people. So John was literally doing the job of 5 people and doing it with excellence and consistency. Every road trip was the same. Every preseason, every game, we just kept it simple. And that's why we could go to a place and win basketball games against teams that we shouldn't have beaten. We were undermanned, the underdog, under-resourced. But John was just the most loyal, just excellent boss because he explained everything on day one and nothing really changed. And I got to send him a text a few weeks before he unexpectedly passed when I got this award. And I was like, John, you were the best boss I ever had. And I just wanted to let you know how much you've meant to me. And I just, a lot of times in life, you don't get to do that. So I was recognized for an award, but it was really about the person who led me on that path.
Yeah. And I'm sorry he passed. And I'm glad you reminded me in your post about reaching out to thank people who have an impact on your life. I'm actually going back to Singapore in a week. Actually, I'm going home next week, and I made a decision to go visit an uncle who's 92 years old in Malaysia. So I get back to Singapore. I only have a week and a bit there, but I'm taking a day to go see this uncle of mine who also had a huge impact on my life. And sometimes we always are too busy, right? It's like, but I think prioritizing people who have had an impact in your life and thanking them while you can it does so much for your own soul. Frankly, I know that sounds like a selfish thing, but because I've done that, a few years ago, I said to myself, as I'm getting older too, I have all these aunties and uncles that I want to see and thank them as much as I can. So anyway, your post really reminded me and gave me more like I have to make time for these kind of things, and I'm grateful that I've made time to go see my uncle in Malaysia in a week and a half. So thank you for reminding me about that.
Thank you for it's kind of honoring John in a way, really great guy, the best boss anyone could ask for. And I try to just be like him as much as I can. And just, you just want to emulate greatness, and he was the best.
Now, I picked up a key learning from your sharing just now, which is that when you did something good or great, say that again. He said it's something about what he expected. It's what he expected. Say that again.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised. When you said that, it made me realize a few things. He did two things with one sentence. I'm not surprised. He complimented you, but at the same time, he reminded you that he thought highly of you. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Like, I'm not surprised is because I had expectations of you that you have fulfilled. I think it says a lot in that one sentence. Yeah. I'm not surprised. That's a key learning. I've not heard that before, frankly. Like, my journey, I've met a lot of leaders, but I've never heard that. Like, complimenting you and saying, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And I got to use it recently. We have where I work now. I've just been blessed my whole life by being around these unicorns, and I think that's like my job has always been to put people that are unicorns in position to optimize their opportunity, whether it be an athlete, my wife's company, the company I'm working with now. Like, that's just my path. Like, I've been around literally one of our players was from Argentina, who when we picked him up from the airport, he had never been to Temple's campus, and we're driving by the new arena they're building, and he said, I said, well, what's your goals here? And he said, I'm going to kick ass in that building. I'm going to be the first player from my country to play in the NBA, and I'm going to win an Olympic gold. And he said it so nonchalant. And I was like, I believed him. And he did all three things, wow. And that was in 1995 where the dream teams had just been, and Argentina, he was the starting point guard for the team. And funny you bring up tennis, because in this movie that came out, The Redeem Team, he's quoted after they beat Team USA, and he said, basketball is not tennis. It's a team sport. You had all the great players, but, this is a team sport. And that's why I've always been inspired by companies that, even if they're under-resourced, if you really are tight as a team and everyone knows where you're going, you can do anything. So I've been blessed in my life by so many people that are just like, hey, and my job's just to whether give them a compliment or help them with something I've learned or be a part of their business, just help that business optimize its opportunity.
Yeah. So you've been part of businesses, exited businesses multiple times. And you've really done this, start, scale, exit, repeat. You've done this thing multiple times, and you get better each and every time. What have you learned along the way as key habits, processes that have helped you succeed?
Yeah, there's three things I need to have in my bank, right? Coach Chaney, no deposit, no return, right? So the three things I need in the bank are: one, I need a one-page strategic plan that we're all aligned with, and not just like it needs to be every quarter updated with your team and individual priorities, right? Like you need to live by that. That keeps me balanced. The next thing, which I think, if anyone asks me how do I start with something like Rhythm, just start with a week in review, right? What are my victories from last week? What are my priorities for this week? Voice of the customer, voice of the worker, parking lot items, right? Like you just get so much, and then you're stuck, right?
Back to your basics. Sit back to your basics.
And weekend reviews are like the best thing if you're going into quarterly planning for me, that you now have this library of like all these different people. Yes. To me, it really has become, it really replaces an annual performance review. I'm like, print out your 52 weeks or 50 weeks you filled out. Let's sit down. Let's see what you got done. And then the most important thing for me is knowing when to look at a KPI in the course of a week. Unfortunately, sometimes it's a Saturday at 3:00, right? You got to look at it at the right time because at that point, where the health of your business is. So every day I'm looking at a different KPI at a specific time. So I'm protecting that time. And that's really what, we build all these businesses off of.
I want to double click into what you just said about looking at the KPI at a specific time. What did you mean by that?
So when I think about that, like I can see that, like when I'm an operator, right? I can see on a Saturday for the business that I was in for 2 decades, Saturday at 3:00, whether time has been submitted, approved, and what percentage we're at. And I can see by knowing that the habits are being followed, that the people that are running that P&L are on target that week. And I want to be as close to those KPIs as possible so that I can quickly identify where we're falling short. I know every day in my current business whether we're going to win or lose by like 2:00 in recruiting. I could see, that assembly line of talent running through. So there's all these times a day that I protect, looking at different KPIs. And then if anything falls apart, like with time approval, I would know that AR is going to be a problem.
I see. So you have actually identified some key patterns and timing as well with the patterns. So it's not good enough to look at these KPIs on a regular basis, but to understand when is the most impactful time. And one thing you learned from Coach Chaney, right, is to be consistent and to repeat that consistency probably gives your team. I've noticed that consistency always calms a team down, no matter how stressful life is.
Yeah, I mean, our jobs is whoever's ass is closest to the fire is most important, right?
Yeah.
So our job is to make sure that if you got to catch a problem as quickly as possible before it becomes some major issue. So one thing that I've done in the last 5 or 6 years is learn lessons from Uber when people rate their day. So in a lot of companies, you'll see after someone's checking out, they'll rate their day. Like, so that hourly worker, you take them off mute, right? So they have a voice now every single day, and you could see trends. You could see trends in managers. You could see trends in shifts. And you want to know why especially when they're disconnected, they're not under one roof. You want to be able to stay connected and try to solve problems really fast. What I hate most about being a leader is when a client hits me with information and I'm flat-footed and I never heard that. So I'm obsessive about knowing what's around the corner, and I can, hit them back with the information first. I was running a business my entire adult life that was 24/7. So things are happening at 3:00 in the morning at an apartment community, right? I got someone sitting at a front desk, fire department comes, packages are missing, residents are having disputes, there's noise, whatever it is. And I wanted to know that information and make that decision, empower our team to make the decision. But when I wake up, and I wake up really early, going back to Temple, we practice at 5 a.m. I want to know this information so that my client can be tucked in and they know that we're on top of things. So, I've kind of taken my major, that hospitality major, and all the things I've done out here have been with that. But then you want to make sure your clients are empowered with the information and not freaking out.
Gotcha. So tell me what gives you joy. So in all this process, what actually ignites your heart that says, man, I love what I do, I enjoy this? So because the journey that we try and help people with is not just about being successful, but it's also about fulfilling their heart, their soul, being joyful in their success, right? So what is it that so far all these things have helped you find that joy in your journey?
Yeah. So it's joy and heartbreak. It's the same thing, right? So when I have a teammate that we've connected together, and as a group, we hit an individual priority. We've seen people grow. The organization's grown. I can walk away and know that that's taken care of. I'll have a KPI that they report to. That gives me incredible joy. I will tell you that the first time we ever did a KPI as a group, my wife and I and handful of people that are still at the company that we originally started, and we hit a goal that we wanted 40 people working 40 hours a week. And we all worked. We talked about it all the time. We didn't even really know what a KPI was, right? So we did this, and we had the greatest seafood dinner we've ever had in our lives. And it feels like when I close my eyes and I think about those people, Rashida and Jamal and Cynthia, I just, and my wife, I think that was one of the greatest moments of my life. A bunch of kind of 20 somethings having a dinner at a fancy place we didn't feel like we belonged at, but it kicked off a company that is nationwide. So that gives me incredible joy. What gives me heartbreak in the same line is when someone doesn't have the right intentions, and we could have won, but for whatever reason I couldn't reach them, or it just wasn't set up for success from the beginning. So it's kind of like that thin line of like, but there's nothing better than remembering the journey. And it's like someone once told me, it's like a big elephant. You got to take one bite at a time. And I think that each spot that you get along the way, it just is such, like, I have a guy who's one of those unicorns running our operation. He just knows how to make a auto dealership better. And he was like, hey, this is where we're going to be. And it took us about 7 months to be there. And he got there, and like there was a lot of people involved, and it was like, oh, we hit a buoy, right? We got to that buoy. So that gives me incredible joy to see people, my teammates, thrive and excel and optimize who they are.
So what is your dream? It sounds like you're the kind of guy that really thrives when you've made an impact in somebody's life. So what is your dream right now in where you are right now? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to spending the rest of my career, now that I'm kind of older, right? Somehow wake up and you're like, you're not 20 something anymore. I want to be able to, and the company I'm with right now really gives me this. I want to be able to help people become managers to directors to VPs, etc. And it's not that, I say I'm not smarter than you. I just have more touches, right? I have more shots at the basket. So I want to play that role in people's lives and just continue to help companies scale, especially family businesses that are just not, they haven't read your book or haven't been a part of, the luck I've had to be a part of, people like you helping us grow. So that's just the role I'd like to play, and awesome. Hopefully put great effort out there.
That's wonderful. So the last question I have that I ask everybody is, this podcast is about helping CEOs have a more joyful and successful journey. However, for you, I'm going to change that question just a little bit because of some things I just realized. I'm going to give you a gift. The gift is, I'd like to reframe that question into, what advice would you give your two wonderful children? If you can go all the way back, like they're starting their career now. And so this is like not giving advice to yourself as a younger person, but you have an opportunity to share with your two kids what secret would you share with them for them to have a joyful and successful life and career? What would that be for your two kids?
It's really simple. Live like your mother, and their mother, as she's risen, she's lifted others. So my wife today helps run a after-school program in Washington, D.C. for thousands of students. And they provide aftercare and before care, and they bring in specials. And so kids are getting those experiences. So as my wife, who is, she started a company because she was working as a temp and didn't get a dollar raise when they called her back to work. So she started a company, right?
Wow.
And,
Yes.
and, you know, so again, another unicorn I've been blessed
Mm-hmm.
to have in my life. And now thousands and thousands and thousands of people have gotten careers because something really important. She made sure that everybody was trained, right? So it wasn't like, and she would say like, hey, if they never work for us, I'm still going to give them paid training because they're going to be better in society. So just live like your mom. As you rise, lift others.
Awesome. Drew,
Wow.
thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
Melissa, back to you.
Yeah, so much, so many nuggets in there. And it's amazing how much basketball has influenced your life and your journey. I was wondering though, in those bus trips that you took, what was the one snack?
That's a great question, and I know exactly what it is because we would
Tell
drive
me.
down. We would drive down to Washington D.C. To play George Washington. If you've been to Philadelphia, we're known for a few different food items, but the best is if you got a soft pretzel, but if you got it hot right out of the oven.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Soft pretzel. I like to drip mine with really spicy mustard and wash it down with a Coke. So
that's your go-to.
people, you know, and
That's nice.
if you know, you take that pretzel and you take them and they come in like this, you know, a bunch of them connected and you just rip them apart.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's my go-to. So if you ever get to Philadelphia, you want to go, but try to time it where they're coming right out of the oven. That's a little local tip.
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I can't wait to go. Patrick, you ready to go take a trip? A
You
little
look me
car trip.
hungry. That's not good for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Drew, so much for sharing your insightful journey. And I think our audience got a ton from that. And again, Patrick, thank you for offering such little great nuggets and pushing back when you really wanted more information. I think this one was one of my favorite podcasts, actually. So, and the funny part is it all started because you didn't like basketball, which is amazing.
I fit the role that, you know, who knew? So
Yeah, no kidding. So until next time, go out there, enjoy your journey. Bye now.